There we go. So an error occurred, but it was popped up on Twitter. Anyway, hi. Well, welcome in to the podcast brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. As you know, we cover Michigan for the Rivals Network, which means you can find us at michigan.rivals.com. If you are joining us live, I'm assuming you are not a gamer and not taking part in EA Sports college football release today for pre-orders, where Josh and I are taking a break from it. Come on here, talk a little bit of Michigan recruiting. Obviously, we've been gone for a couple weeks, so a couple commits came in we can talk about, and just kind of where things are heading with the barbecue at the Big House on the horizon. Michigan in the thick of it for a few big targets. And hey, a couple months or so removed from panic and anxiety, and Michigan's got a top 15 class on track for possibly even better. So, joined as always by our Intel insider, publisher, and Mr. Maize and Blue Review himself, Josh Henschke. The beard is continuing to stick around. I am a fan. Got the chain on. You're looking fly today, sir.
Yeah, I'm trying my best out here. That's all I can do.
How much gameplay have you got in already?
I've played like a game and a half. It's currently on pause right now. It's it's really good. I like it a lot. I like the game a lot.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's a big improvement over whatever Madden has put out over the last couple of years from a gameplay standpoint, mechanics and things like that. It's a learning curve for sure. I mean, I've had some issues throwing some really bad balls and kicking some atrocious field goals.
The field goal is hard.
I almost kick it out of the stadium out of the left. It's disgusting how bad it is. So, it's a really good game. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time.
Yeah, like they put 3 years into this. Realistically, people forget it got delayed a year already. I think they did a really, really good job of capturing what makes college football great. I think it's cool that the players are involved. Right? Always should have been, whatever. If we got time, we can talk more at the end. I did an article about some of the details and stuff in there. Obviously, some players opted out, aren't in the game, which is kind of a bummer and weird, especially if you're like us and talking about who the sixth corner is on the depth chart, and then you load the game and you're like, who are these fake people? But anyway, Josh, go ahead. Tell us real quick about our friend Wes, and then let's dive into it. We got some good recruiting notes to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, just want to shout out our friends, Wes Romberger at My Perfect Franchise. Again, his services are 100% free, risk free. Give him a call if you feel like wanting to do a change of pace or anything like that. But would you like to escape corporate America for good? Maybe you'd like to start a business on the side and keep your corporate gig. Wes can help. Wes is a franchise consultant as well as a business owner and can help you find a franchise that fits your skill set, financial requirements, how much time you have to commit, and more. A franchise is a business startup and operations kit, perfect for those with general business skills, but who may not have specific knowledge on starting and running a small business. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help you if you have any questions about business ownership. You can reach him by phone at 512-970-7478 or see him on the web at myperfectfranchise.net/aboutwest. Again, that's 512-970-7478. And thanks again for West and team for sponsoring the show.
It's our day one guy.
Absolutely.
Real quick, Darren has gotten to my heart here. EA, whoever did CFB 25 to the next F1 game, they have butchered the F1 game.
Yeah,
it used to be made by Codemasters. It was one of the best racing simulation games ever.
Yep.
And the things they've done with it now, it's like, I know they've tried to make it like easier for controller players and stuff, but oh my God, it's awful. And it's really frustrating for old school people. I got the wheel, the pedals, the whole deal. I'm not great at it, but like, you're still playing 21. Yeah, I've got 24, and because I want the new cars and everything, but I have no interest in it. Anyway, okay, let's get to it. We missed a couple commits, so I want to touch those real quick. One of them, Josh, that you had been on kind of early, and I honestly did not really think it was a real possibility, but here we are. Michigan did flip. Ivan Taylor, Ivan Taylor, I can't remember which it is. I apologize. Those of regular viewers know how much I suck at this. But Ike Taylor's son, Notre Dame commit, does flip to Michigan. All hail Lamar Morgan. That guy, I think him and Lou Esposito were probably the two coaching hires that people were, I don't know if skeptical is the right word, but like maybe not as hype as others, right? Arguably because other people were named in line first. And we got some recruiters on our hands here. Big flip, and Taylor joins Winston for a pretty impressive safety duo in this 25 class.
Yeah, absolutely. This one was kind of bubbling under the surface for a while. You know, it was one of those things where I was kind of on, on your side too, where it was like, yeah, is this really going to happen?
Right.
Is this something that we really can consider? And then suddenly, 2 weekends ago, it just kind of just bubbled over the surface and things finally happened. I mean, I think Michigan did a really good job of staying persistent. This is why you never really burn bridges when it comes to recruiting, because you don't really know what's going to happen, in the future or even the next day. So, Michigan did a good job of selling playing time, selling, just themselves. And Lamar Morgan in particular did a really good job here. Just staying in contact, staying persistent, really obviously one of the major reasons why this one got over the finish line. I mean, you can make the argument too that Notre Dame is kind of loaded up at his position, and their commit they had a couple of days before Taylor even flipping, not necessarily kind of put it over the top or over the edge for Michigan, but
it's almost like a trade-off Blair and Taylor for Michigan in that
respect. Right, exactly, yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that Blair is, the reason why, Taylor decided to flip to Michigan, but, I think spots and playing time and depth chart had a lot to do with it. So, again, I mean, it's just a really good job of Lamar Morgan kind of flexing his muscles a little bit. As you said, I think Michigan's got a really good tandem of Winston and Taylor for this class. And as Darren mentioned here, they just need a corner, maybe two. I don't know. I mean, in this day and age with the way they've recruited the portal, they may not necessarily get a recruit or may not address a position, but they may address it in the portal. And we've seen how quickly they can address positions through the portal too. So
you don't have to panic and take a guy.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
you can go after the guys you want. If you don't get one, like, it's a bummer, but high school recruiting is just part of building the team now, right? So
yeah. So you don't.
There's a name, we'll get into it, but
you don't necessarily need to take projects either. I mean, you can. Michigan's done really well with projects, but the need to round out the back end of your recruiting classes is really the need for that is dropped significantly with the way the portal's in play now. So I mean, I think there's some guys that Michigan is in for at corner that you'd like to see them get. Obviously, you don't want to see them miss on anyone, but I just want to offer up a counter argument that, I mean, even with defensive tackle too, is the same thing. If there's a big need for it and, there might not be a guy that really ticks the boxes for you, you can always go to the portal and fill out your depth chart that way. So, I mean, a really strong start to the safety tandem, because that was kind of a question mark, through the, beginning stages of the 2025 recruiting classes, where Michigan was going to go for safety. And they've answered that in a major way with Winston and Taylor in particular. I mean, you're talking about a fringe 5-star guy that Michigan just picked up. So almost picked up almost nonchalantly too, which is, it's not typically how Michigan does its business, but hey, you take them how you can get them. So really good start. There's a couple more needs that they really should address in this class, but man, I mean, it's hard to dislike what Michigan's doing on the trail right now. Yeah, they've had some misses, but you look at the quality over quantity approach, and you really like what Michigan's doing.
And they're
so
catching up on quantity.
Yeah, that too.
And maintaining that high average. So
Yep.
they're top 3 or 4 in average recruit ranking, and now
Yep.
up to 16 commits. So
Yep. Yeah, they got to 16 almost quietly. I mean, they really got there in a hurry, and they got there with, as we just mentioned, quality over, the just taking whoever, so yeah, I mean, obviously stars, they vary from site to site or whatever.
we've got Winston underrated. We've talked about that.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if he made a jump talking to some people, but again, that's just opinion. That's just, not going to camps and being seen. I think that's the big part. And yeah, it is what it is. So I don't expect Michigan to kind of really
I'm laughing because somebody commented on a recent podcast. They called it it is what it is podcast because of how often you use that phrase.
Yeah, well,
it is.
You won't see me. I'm just not a panic guy.
Yeah.
And I'm a go with the flow type of guy. And that's what you have to do with college football these days. It's like we're in recruiting with the transfer portal, and if it is the is what it is podcast, that's fine. I'd rather be the is what it is podcast than the overreacting, the whatever else is out there on the spectrum. So
yeah,
I'm perfectly fine where I'm at.
I'm perfectly fine where you are too, Josh. All right, we're gonna get into a commit, which is gonna tie perfectly into what I wanted to talk about in terms of big picture Michigan recruiting and specifically a question that's kind of existed since this transition began regarding the Michigan offense and what could or won't change. So let's start with the commitment first. Another Louisiana receiver, another Louisiana player. That's 3 in the class. Ron Bellamy going back home. I think a lot of people would say yes, right? Awesome. Keep doing that. A speedster from Louisiana did pick Michigan over LSU. Look, I hedged it in the article. We've talked about it. It's in the back of the mind. Maybe it's Jamar Chase PTSD, right? The thought that, hey, if LSU pushes for this kid late, maybe he's tough to hold on to. After listening to him and his parents and some other feedback coming out, either gained face or lost beard. Ouch. Anyway, I'm trying to think where I left off. So I feel a little bit more confident. I mean, obviously recruiting's recruiting, like you said, when he signs on the dotted line, fine. But you pair Wright with the other receiver from Louisiana, the taller Jacob Washington. That class looks really good already. We'll get into where Michigan is heading, but this is a playmaker, man. Again, this is a speedy track star type receiver that plays against elite talent in Louisiana. That LSU, if you want to debate how hard they push, some people said they were pushing towards the end there, but look, they offered him. They were interested in him. This is a big get for Ron Bellamy.
Yeah. You can make the argument all you want that, LSU might have slow played him, or he might not even be a take for LSU. But I think that speaks a lot to what Michigan's doing, that, he's ready to wrap things up in July and ready to announce, hey, I'm leaving the state. I don't care what LSU is doing and what they've done. And again, maybe this is all totally moot when signing day comes along, but yeah, you got to like what Michigan was able to do in securing these. I mean, all 3 guys, Jasper Parker, Jacob Washington, and now Philip Wright. You kind of just have to like what they've done, especially, with Ron Bellamy making, I know I've seen the gripes of Ron Bellamy and his recruiting prowess, or whatever you want to call it. I think this cycle, if all goes to plan, and even adding a guy like Andrew Marsh, or even Miles out of Utah, I think he's really established himself and flexed his muscles. I think it takes a while, because when you're a guy that is fresh into college ball in terms of coaching, as Ron Bellamy is, it takes a while to kind of build connections and build trust. And there's no better place to do it than in your backyard, and especially in a talent-rich area like Louisiana.
So he was kind of originally brought on as to help out in the Michigan area, right? His connections to other Michigan high schools. Yeah. And that's why if you look at his best recruiting wins were where he was like a secondary guy at a different position.
Yeah.
Right?
So and then now you include Morion Walker, and then losing him and getting him back. I think, I just think that Ron Bellamy's has a really strong cycle so far. Could get even stronger to where the strong could turn to excellent if all, the ball bounces the right way as we kind of expect it to, at least with Andrew Marsh. You can really see the blueprint of what they're looking for in terms of a speedy, athletic guy. And they're adding some height a little bit. They're adding some above 6 foot guys, which again was kind of the fan gripe. Where are these tall receivers? Where are these athletic guys? And why are you recruiting all these sub 6 foot guys? And Michigan won with a lot of sub 6 foot guys, or right around there. So the blueprint, they're not straying too far from what they were, but they're adding a twist. They're these little twists that Sherrone Moore is adding to the program. Personally, I think they're going to be better off for. They could have stayed the course and just totally recreated what Harbaugh was doing, but then you kind of lose your identity a little bit if you're Sherrone Moore, and lose who you really are. So I think a lot. We say this a lot with a lot of the recruits, like, hey, you can see the blueprint. You can see what they're trying to do here. And, obviously I think the proof will be in the pudding in terms of, what this offense will look like next month, which is wild to say now, that, the end of next month, does Michigan kind of go beyond what they have been the past couple of years? And they certainly have the pieces, and you include 25 into that in the future. They certainly have the guys that can do it and kind of can create this unique looking offense. But again, we can tell you this all the time, like, hey, it might happen, it might not. The proof's going to be on Saturday is where this works out. And if they go back to what their bread and butter is and they're winning, it doesn't really matter because they're winning. So, it's kind of that unique dichotomy of, do they mix things up? Do they at least kind of try to be different? Does that impact winning? That obviously that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But adding guys that can do many things on offense and have athleticism and have speed. We laugh at that speed in space, but when it works, it's really good. And they have guys that are capable of doing that. So, you can see the blueprint with just who they've targeted and who they've gotten. There's no doubt that Michigan's offense, from where it is right now, if you're looking ahead to the future with the 2025 class, they're getting more athletic and they're getting faster. So, and there's nothing wrong with staying the same offensively too, but adding twists. They ride what got you here. You're here for a reason, doing what worked. But every team every year is going to be different, so you kind of have to cater your offense to what you have. So, if this class holds, you're going to have to cater to athletic, fast guys. So, I think you might have to change a little bit, but I can't sit here and say, wholesale changes are happening, because it's just impossible to predict right now.
Yeah. But I am going to go a step further than you because I don't think we have to read between the lines too much, right? So
True.
you're 100% right. This team has been successful the last few years in its ability to adapt to the strengths of the roster that it has, right? We've especially seen that on defense where, look, the scheme's there, but some years it's because the edge has the depth. And then this year, the interior has the talent, right? We know because of Philip Wright and other guys that are being recruited that, look, one thing Sharon Moore does really well is X's and O's. Kirk Campbell, too. They get in here and show these guys, here's where we're going to develop you. Here's how we think we can use you. Here's how you can help us win, right? And they're selling these guys on throwing the ball more, right? Are we going to see that this year? We don't know. I'm with you on that because, again, what's the strength of the team going to be? We won't know. But for them to be involved with a guy like Andrew Marsh, who is a top 50 player in this class, one of the top wide receivers from Texas, just an all-around receiver, size, speed, hands, route running, right? He'd be the best wide receiver recruit Michigan's had since DPJ and Nico, right? DPJ was number one in his class, whatever, but like this is the kind of guy we're talking about here, right? He's been on up to Ann Arbor a bunch, coming at the barbecue at the big house. Michigan envisions a class of 3 receivers with Marsh, Washington, and Wright, and wow, right? You've got your outside guy, you've got your speedy slot guy, you've got your Z do-it-all receiver, and Marsh. That would be fantastic. You have a future cast in for Marsh right now.
Yep.
Right. So I think that if you're hoping for good things for Michigan, the anticipation would be close things down at the barbecue. He commits in August. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
But
I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, I think a lot of these guys where they're in a position with right now, even an Owusu Boateng, for example, the sooner this gets shut down, the better it bodes for Michigan. You know, I think if hypothetically, if he shut down his process coming right out of Michigan's visit, I would say, yeah, that's probably better for Michigan. So I think the big thing is getting these guys back on campus is huge, and getting Marsh on campus is huge. You know, getting a guy like Owusu Boateng back up on campus is big. But they're in a position right now, and Jerome Miles is a really good example of it.
So I want to tie him into the Marsh conversation because I think Michigan plans on taking 3 receivers, but they'd go to 4 if that's Marsh and Miles.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't get an either or situation with those two from Michigan's perspective or them as players. They're very different players. I don't see Marsh making Miles not come or vice versa.
Right.
So,
I agree. And I think you're looking at a guy that, you know, I think Michigan's in a position right now in this 25 class that, you know, if they can get a guy on campus, whether it's the first time, third time, whatever, there's a puncher's chance. You know, and I said this on the boards today. You know, there's a puncher's chance with Jerome Miles here. You know, I do think Utah is going to be very, very tough to beat. But, you know, as we've seen so many times this cycle, Nathaniel Marshall, getting back in with Jalen Williams, flipping Ivan Taylor, you get guys on campus, you have a puncher's chance to get in the race or in most of these cases winning it. So the fact that, you know, they're even swinging for the fences is a good sign, and that players are receptive is an even better sign. So they may not land a Jerome Miles, but they may land Marsh, but at least you tried, and at least you've got a fighter's chance or puncher's chance to get into the race here and make things interesting. So, you know, whether that proves to be effective or not, it remains to be seen. But the fact that they're trying is the most important part, and they're trying and it's effective. So more often than not, you're going to see if it being more effective than not effective. You know, yes, they'll have their misses. Every staff in the country has their misses. It's going to happen. I don't think you should judge Michigan on their misses, but of who they get. And I think what they have right now is a very strong class, and they've got a couple of guys on the line that could make this class a very, very good one if it gets over the line. So, yeah, I mean, there's just a number of guys I could list right now that, that Michigan, if once they get them on campus, just a fighter's chance. Owusu Boateng is probably one of the biggest ones they have right now because they were, way, way behind heading into his official, and then coming out of it, they're right near the top. You can make an argument that they're right there with Notre Dame. So, yeah,
And
I
that's
really
just validation
like
for
what they're
Sharon
doing.
Moore, man.
Yeah,
Validation for when he talked about right from the get-go what he was going to change.
yep.
And we talked about recruiting. Well, what does that mean? Right? It was everything. The communication, the on-campus experience, right? And I hate having these conversations as some sort of shot at Harbaugh. It's not.
No,
But
not at all.
But Moore is just more hands-on. He just is.
Yep.
And we're seeing the process be different. And the NLI, look at me go. Yeah. NIL, that always annoyed me, but I never made that mistake often. Anyway, the NIL conversation has obviously changed, right? Yeah. We've talked about Michigan's change here is, look, they're not dropping bags, upfront money, blah, 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 right? But they're having honest conversations with these kids. They know what their value is, right? They know it's part of it. Yep. If NIL is the only factor or the driving factor, or they feel like they're getting put into some kind of bidding war, they're going to step back. We've seen that happen with a couple of recruits already, but they're having the conversation so they can be in play with a guy like Marsh. You already kind of touched on him. I'm going to tie into it. A couple of folks have brought him up as well. In terms of NIL, there's not a lot of kids like Andrew Babalola out there. Okay. Mm-hmm. When he talks about academics, he means it. His family means it. This is somebody not seeking attention at all in this recruiting process. Him and his family are very diligent and serious about it. I don't mean this as a shot as anybody else, but it's kind of refreshing in this world of recruiting. He's truly evaluating his future, right? We've heard Stanford for a long time because of the academic angle. Michigan obviously has a case to make there. Yep. And they're making that case, and then they're obviously making a football argument. They have a lot of people on their side in this recruitment, including a former Stanford tackle now playing at Michigan, Miles Hinton, who had this exact decision to make. Right, his brother was at Michigan, chose Stanford, now here at Michigan. We know some of the newer guys, like I believe Andrew Sprague has been involved as well. There's the Kansas connection to Moore. I mean, there's a lot of interesting pieces here. I think Owusu Boateng is up there for sure. Marsh I would include in the conversation, but because we kind of feel a little bit more confident about him, you could make the argument this is the most important recruit currently on Michigan's board. Yeah. They don't have that true tackle in this class, and if they don't land him, I don't know that you're just not going to get a shot at a guy like this often. Right. Right. So, I mean, landing him would just be a monster. So where are we on his timeline? Because I know it's kind of quiet with him, but it feels like we might be getting close now.
Yeah, I know the talk was that once he was done taking his officials, he's going to get into decision mode. But at this point, a decision could come down at any time. I would be kind of surprised if we left the month of August without either A, a decision, or B, a firm timeline of when a decision is going to happen. Really, it just feels like a 2-horse race right now between Michigan and Stanford. And I know Oklahoma's a distant third right now in this race. So, man, this for me personally, it feels too close to call right now. I know our Greg Smith from our national guy, one of the best guys out there, from a worker standpoint and just a good dude is posted today about his prediction for Babalola, and he picked Michigan for him. So
for basically this reason.
Yeah. And there is there is some level of knowledge there. I think there isn't I don't think it's stone cold truth that he is absolutely going to pick Michigan right now. I do think there is probably some level of leaning towards Michigan, but I think, this is about as close of a race as you can get right now between Michigan and Stanford. And, I'm not going to hate on a kid for picking between Stanford and Michigan.
Right.
from an academic standpoint. I just feel like from a football standpoint, it would be a waste for him, but that's fine. I'm not going to hate on the kid. You're going to get the best of both worlds wherever you end up.
Well, and I've said this before to people too, when they ask about like, oh, how could we lose someone to Stanford? When they take the education part serious, 1, 2, I don't know how many people have been to Palo Alto.
Yeah.
And I love Ann Arbor. That's the best campus in America. Like that is a beautiful campus, a beautiful city. And I think, and we've seen players in the past, especially Michigan recruiting. I brought up Hinton. Was it Heron? Was another one. Like, as long as Stanford's in the conversation, I think it's hard for people to discount them until it's like, okay, it's done. Right. Yeah. And if he did pick Stanford, I know the football argument, I get it with folks, but I wouldn't be shocked. I'm probably more Michigan lean than most, but I tend to be more optimistic than others. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you. If he picks Stanford, like, I get it, dude.
Yeah, and there's no denying that this would be a big loss for Michigan. I think this is like the number one must land guy, because you just don't land.
Ty Montgomery, that's a good one.
You just don't land offensive tackles through the portal. At least guys that are ready to go. You just
really good left tackles. Their programs don't let them go.
Yeah, it does not happen. It does not happen.
100%.
So, yeah, man, he's one of these guys that you got to land. And, it's one of those situations where if he does end up picking Stanford over Michigan, you kind of just got to be like, well, I mean, that sucked for Michigan, but you got to respect the kid's decision. And I think there's a lot of people pro Michigan in his ear. The staff's done a really good job of being in his ear. The commits are in his ear constantly. And I think just from a football standpoint, I think people keep that in mind and say like, hey, like guiding him to Michigan. So I just think from a logic standpoint, it feels like it's going to be Michigan.
Right.
But we've seen logic get thrown out the window so many times when it comes to recruiting that, nothing ever surprises me anymore. So I truly think this is a race that's currently split down the middle. I mean, if you ask for my gut feeling, I feel like, yes, it's split down the middle, but I think it's probably 51-49 Michigan than Stanford right now. So, if he makes a trip to campus before his and any announcement happens, I think that bodes extremely well for Michigan, because I think from a location standpoint, going to a trip to Michigan is probably a lot easier than making a trip to Stanford. So I think Michigan's got that going for him in terms of location, but we'll see if he makes any trips before or even after a decision. But I am slightly leaning Michigan for him, but not with any type of confidence right now. I think it's that close. So, we'll see how things develop. But, I mean, from a football standpoint, Michigan's got everything you need. And fortunately, Michigan's got the education side of it too. Yeah. So that's a really tough argument to make against Michigan when you're comparing the two. So, we'll kind of see.
Stanford has a newish staff that's been successful at other places. They do have a history of putting alignment into the draft.
Yep.
My argument for that would be, that's the foundation that Jim Harbaugh laid at Stanford to put alignment in the draft. So, but again, this is a kid in a family that all signs point to a holistic approach here, and whatever decision he makes will be well sourced, and you know what I mean? Like all power to him. It's just somebody you can root for no matter what happens. But yeah, no way around it. It feels like a position of need in this class for the reasons you mentioned. You obviously bring in Andrew Sprague last year, a Blake Frazier who I thought would move interior, but right now they're keeping it right tackle. We'll see. Roebuck's another guy that could be a tackle in that class.
Absolutely.
But you've got your center right now. You've got your interior lineman because Gatch, even though plays tackle, people think Ben Bredesen, Trevor Keegan, that kind of mold, he'll move interior. So I think the other, I know linebacker's been mentioned, right? We've talked about him. The other, you brought up defensive tackle earlier and cornerback. Those feel like the other two obvious needs right now. After Maxwell Roy picked Ohio State, which in hindsight seems kind of like, well, duh. Right. The other big target on the board right now, let me make sure I click the right one, is DJ Sanders.
Yep.
From Texas, another Texas kid. The Texas schools. Let me see if I can feel good about him, obviously.
Yep.
Not to beat the same drum over and over again. This is another get him on campus, feel good situation, right? So, getting him at the barbecue, whatever it might be, pulling him from the state could be tough, but you feel like you've got a good sell with what Michigan's been doing at the defensive tackle position as of.
Yeah. I mean, this is the one that, that Texas wants him desperately. And I think Texas right now is the team to beat for him. For obvious reasons. I mean, he's right in their backyard, but, it's one of those, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of those guys, if you get him on campus, you have a puncher's chance. And I think the longer he kind of delays this recruitment, it almost feels like he's looking for reasons not to pick Texas, so the staff is working really hard to kind of make him not go on that visit, to try to convince him to not go on that visit. So, it's what we're talking, barbecues next week, week and a half.
Really?
Yeah, it's next week. Yeah, next week. Basically end of July. So we'll see what happens. I don't get all the warm and fuzzy feelings about him. I still think he ends up elsewhere, but getting him on campus would be huge for kind of Michigan standing. I know Lou Esposito is working really hard here. Another guy who's done a really nice job this cycle. But we'll kind of see what happens, post Sanders announcement. If he goes elsewhere, I do get the sense that they're going to kind of open up. They're going to open up the recruiting a little bit, at least, I think, they're going to open it up and not necessarily, offer a bunch of guys. I think they're going to kind of do their due diligence and kind of see what's out there and kind of find a guy that fits. But we'll see. It's kind of one of those, it's an interesting situation. He's one of those kids that he doesn't really talk much. There isn't much out there on.
I watched an interview he did with somebody, like a local Texas person he was at a camp or something at Texas, and just very, very short answers.
Yep.
And I was like trying to see what I could, because sometimes those local interviews, when those are some of the best ones, you know what I mean? Because it's somebody who can talk about his high school with him.
Right.
And less the college program. So, and nothing, just absolutely nothing to pull from it other than some pretty generic responses.
Yeah.
Not a bad way. I'm again, not taking a shot, but not a lot of info being let on there.
Right. Yeah, no, he's just a hard kid to read, but if you just kind of read tea leaves and talking to people from other sites and things like that, it's other sites in our network. I think, it's obvious that Texas is going to be the biggest threat to Michigan here. And we don't really even know where kind of Michigan fits in that top group. I mean, they could be, third or fourth. Yeah. So, we'll see what happens during the barbecue visit. But if he makes that visit, obviously a very good sign for Michigan. I'm just not sitting here with the most warm and fuzzy feelings that they're going to get him. But that can change. I mean, we've seen it so many times that things can change. But I think he's Texas. I think he's Texas bound, and I do think Michigan will find someone. Whether it be more of the project type or someone committed elsewhere or whatever.
I was gonna say Kevin brought him up, but Christian Evans is a
Yep.
defensive tackle committed to Virginia Tech currently. They're trying to get him on campus, and when you circle the guys like that, the pull is pretty easy because you're Michigan.
Yep.
Right. So you even a commit, you can get their attention where they're like, look, it's Michigan. I got to look into this,
Yeah, exactly.
But,
yeah.
You've said too, the late in the cycle programs on the field don't look like what the coach was selling. Maybe there's a coaching change or whatever else happens. Like there's almost like a whole second cycle to circle back on some dudes. But but hey, you obviously would love to get a kid like
Darren nails it here. They're in a position where they have depth at D tackle where they can kind of afford to take a developmental guy. And
they took 4 guys last year. That's a good point.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They have Pale and a bunch of other guys that'll probably have some development before, this guy gets even on campus. So
I want to call him Bagel, but how do you say it again?
Beagle.
Yeah.
Should
have been Bagel.
Yeah, I know. Missed opportunity by the Germans.
And Wafel, not Waffle.
Yeah, I know. It's all right though. Yeah, they're gonna find someone to address that need at defensive tackle. I just don't know how yet. I mean, because that's when you're talking about tackle. When you're talking about tackle prospects on the offensive line, those are at a premium in the portal. Defensive tackle, you can probably find a guy or two that you can take if you need to.
If Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant weren't here this year, the 2 defensive tackles that Michigan looked at in the portal, one of them would be here.
Yep.
Right. Yep. I mean, that was just nothing but playing time where their names escape me. The GVSU guy and Kent State, CJ West.
Yep.
And anyway, look, when you have 2 of the top 3 or 4 defensive tackles in the country and possibly a healthy Rayshon Benny and Trey Pierce and some other guys fighting for rotation. This is a 4th or 5th year guy looking to transfer. They're looking to play now 1 year, do the best they can and get to the league.
Yep.
Right. So in the portal, it's easier to address a starter level guy when you have starter reps available. So,
but 100%. Totally agree.
All right. Last position of need we'll talk about here. Corner. Right. Look, props to Lamar Morgan, what he did in the transfer portal, following losing Sabb, following the Rod Moore injury. Quentin Johnson almost feels like a transfer portal addition in some ways as well. Right. We've already talked about Winston and Taylor and what a good pair that is. You're going to lose Will Johnson, right? And as much as we talk about Michigan and their development and the 3 or 4 star guys and blah, 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 it sure helps to have an elite corner too.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's there. And again, they've recruited that position well in the past. There's some guys there that, Hill obviously feels like he's in a good position. Still crazy you lose Waller. That's a whole nother story, I guess. But hey, this is another position too where Edmond last year, real late addition, right? Yep. Those guys can be found. Like we just talked about Purdue commit, blah, blah, whatever. But the guy right now that Michigan seems to be narrowing in on, another Texas dude. I mean, not surprising, Lamar Morgan with his connections there. But Jaden Sanders.
Yep.
I don't know a ton about this recruitment. You've got a 2-horse race right now, and both sides think they got him kind of situation.
Yeah. It's kind of this one I feel a lot better about than the other Sanders. This one is down between Michigan and Oklahoma State. Sanders will be at the barbecue, and I think that's the last visit he's going to take before he announces in August. So obviously from timing standpoint, it bodes well for Michigan. I've heard from one person close to the Sanders recruitment that says that Oklahoma State is the team to beat. And I've also heard, from another side that Michigan feels good about it, about where things stand and can make a move, when he comes up for the visit. So another kid that really, he just seems like he's the main guy right now at corner. Obviously that can change. You can find some corners, but he really quickly have been turning into, he's like the premier guy for them that they've identified out of Texas. So again, another really good job by Lamar Morgan getting in this one. I know he had a really strong visit a couple weeks ago. Really enjoyed spending time with Sharon Moore, and I know Sharon Moore is involved with this one too. So ultimately, we'll see. I'm not ready to call this race either way right now. I think if he were to announce today, it probably would be Oklahoma State. But with Michigan getting this last visit and getting kind of the last chance to get in his ear before he makes an announcement, he could very well pick the Wolverines here in a couple of weeks. But we'll kind of see where this one's going. I feel good about it, not great. But again, get a guy on campus, puncher's chance. So we'll kind of see what happens there.
We know what this barbecue at the Big House has meant for Michigan in the past. Hopefully there's a food upgrade this year. That was part of the part of the changes. But look, we're joking, but in all seriousness, Michigan's most important commits, Michigan's most important targets for multiple years are a part of this visit. We've seen in the past what commit stuff can roll out of this. And yes, your average fan, this is the last one for July because that becomes a dead period moving forward. But yeah, well, getting people on campus for that. And also too, how do I want to say this? Jim was not pro push for commitment. And I think his logic was probably sound in that you don't want to feel like you're getting him at that moment and then that's not going to stand. And then you're going to have to fight for him or he's a flip candidate or whatever. Like you want the commitment to be as solid as possible. Right. We know again, not necessarily just reading between the lines, but from talking to some recruits and some other folks around this process, if Michigan feels like they're in a good spot and they feel like they've answered the questions and the door is cracked open, they're not scared to say, dude, let's lock this down right now.
Yeah.
They're just not. And again, that's not a holistic change pushing for non-Michigan guys. That's not what's happening here, right? The culture is still important. They've talked about, we want people to pick Michigan for Michigan. Like all of that's true, but I think it's just a change of like, look, you're salespeople. Sometimes you got to ask for the sale.
Right.
So and maybe that's why I think Taylor is a perfect situation of that, where the constant communication, building the relationship is there. And then it's like, dude, you know what? Let's do this.
Yeah.
And then it happens quickly. Right. I want to bring him up because I know it was kind of like a running gag for a little bit. I haven't heard anything new on him, but Ralph brings up Alex Graham. In all seriousness, if Colorado is still a mess this year, I mean, we've already seen some offseason stuff with Dion where it's like, and his kids talking about everybody's Super Bowl. You won 4 games, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's
the anti-Michigan.
Right.
It's so interesting. But anyway, that could be fun. Like, is that a situation if Colorado's a mess? Maybe they circle back. I don't know. But
maybe it's entirely possible that Michigan circles back. I mean, I know that they had him on a visit here not too long ago, but yeah, I mean, it could very well be a situation where, Michigan kind of takes advantage of a disaster or whatever Colorado is this year. I mean, I don't know, I no idea what to expect from Colorado other than just annoying and like just bad football. But Yeah, I mean, that's not something I'm going to rule out for sure. I mean, I think Michigan would have got him before, minus the coaching kind of turnover. I think
Yeah.
losing Klink hurt Michigan short term, but long term, I think they're doing just fine.
Darren's coming at me with the F1 stuff today. I don't think that's a good analogy, though. Now I got to try and think of one instead of Checo, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be very much be a situation where they could take advantage of it. I mean, I refuse to rule anything out because the landscape of what Michigan's class could look like between now and December could be vastly different, vastly in a good way, vastly in a bad way. So, Michigan is historically in the past, I don't know, 5 years, if you want to go even further back, Michigan is always closed really well.
yeah.
They've closed December really well.
God, there were years where they didn't have half their class till the end of the
right.
Now,
right.
part of that was because the early signing day has become real signing day.
Yep.
And we're seeing more people commit in the summer and in early fall before high school season starts now than we used to.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. The calendar shifted too, but
right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So we'll kind of see. Yeah, I just there's going to be. I still feel like there's going to be, and I say this every year, there's going to be a name or two that we're not even thinking about right now
100%.
that is going to pop out on the scene. I mean, Ivan Taylor, I mean, we weren't really thinking about him. I mean, yeah, he was kind of in the mix and he was in the conversation, but with recruiting, how it just changes so rapidly, even next week, there could be a name that comes out of nowhere. I mean, not necessarily, but that's just kind of the way recruiting goes. Yeah. But, you look at NIL and you look at all of the new things that have, come into play in the recruiting. I mean, a lot of programs kind of have at least their ducks in a row when it comes to recruiting classes around this time this year, just to have NIL deals in place with players and having all that, taken care of. And that's kind of why they're, introducing a earlier signing period.
Right.
With that too, is that, you've got that deal set, you're done. So, yeah, I mean, so the flips may not be as frequent as they have been in years past, but there's no reason in my mind that Michigan can't get one or two, or even a late ad of a guy that still hasn't committed or whatever. It's just it goes beyond the recruiting rankings of recruits. Recruiting. There's so many kids out there that there's fits everywhere. It's just up to the staff to find it. And Michigan's beefed up their recruiting department in a major way. There's structure, there's organization now. They have so much more resources to use to identify kids now that there's just going to be so many more players that come out of the woodwork that we weren't really even thinking about. So we'll kind of see how things go, but I'm banking on every year that there's one or two guys that we're not talking about right now that are going to either be on Michigan's radar in a major way or end up in the class.
Yeah, I mean, I brought him up earlier, but Edmond last year, but was kind of an obvious one where it was like, oh, okay. And I almost hate bringing him up now, but Darius Clemens was coaching change in Oregon, and then all of a sudden they're back in play.
Right.
So, and that's an interesting piece of it too. Now is the coaching changes and how quickly those are happening. I don't know. It's still a very new world, like you said. Yep. So it's interesting, but yeah, I'm just not at a point where there's a position where I want to panic because, Derek Moore was late as well, I believe. Yeah.
He was.
Last year, I think about edge recruiting, and I mean, I'm not going to do it, but we could pull up some podcasts where my optimism was through the roof on edge recruiting. And I was talking about how like Michigan's literally going to have to pick which 4 or 5 of these top 8 edge guys they're going to want. And, like that's how it was looking for a little while there. And then one by one, Mayo and, the Smith brothers flip and so on. And all of a sudden,
yeah,
we were thinking, could they take 7 edge guys, right? And they had Baxter and they had Nichols. And then late in the cycle, they add Lugard Edekpe, who is probably one of my favorite intriguing prospects from that class. Dude's got crazy length. Looks like he could be really good. He's, based on the spring game and some other things we've heard already, looks like he's ahead of schedule in terms of his physical development. And if you believe EA Sports College Football 25, he's right there in terms of the rotation on the edge position. It was surprising to me. He's up there. He was like right behind. He's not far behind Derek Moore.
Yeah.
On their ranking, and Ito Eda's there as well. So, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of where things sit. I think the overall, like I said, big picture is where we were a couple months ago in terms of anxiety isn't there anymore. And this idea of like trusting the staff only in the sense that, look, Sherrone Moore has been pretty candid about what his plan was and what that could look like. And now that it's happening, it's like, okay, right? I'll be here to call you out if it blows up later in the year. I think you have to do some things on the field to close the sales pitch with some folks, right? Like if you go out there, this does not look good.
Yep.
And all of a sudden that continuity selling point isn't there anymore. You got a problem, right? Vice versa. You go out there and the continuity point is still there. Maybe some other guys who, like you said, you circle back and maybe there's some guys that were waiting to see the staff in action, right? But where you sit today, high average rating. I love the dudes they have, the fit they have, and if this ends up being top 15 and not top 5 or whatever, coming off a national championship, it's still what Michigan's been doing for the last however many years, right?
Yeah, right.
It's still the same formula.
Right.
So,
is your average fan mentions here. On the flip
100%.
side, if Michigan looks good,
100%.
That's gonna it totally, that's your launch point. So I do think this class has absolutely exceeded expectations for, at least for me. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but at least for me, I think it's exceeded my expectations. It's still very much a transition year, obviously, but if you look, and again, we're in July, a lot can change once games start to matter. The recruiting is certainly not, they're not recruiting like it's a transition year. There's a lot of selling that's being done, a lot of buy-in. And I think that's what Sherrone is, traditionally what is done really well is the buy-in. And that's really what Sherrone's done. So, I think, and to build off that, what you're
I was going to say, it's a good question.
Yeah. What would look good? Yeah. That is a good question. I think, 10-2, 11-1 playoffs, look good in losses, if that even can be a thing.
Well, there's 3 games that are going to define Michigan's season in terms of exceeding expectations. There's 3 games they're not going to be favored in. And that's Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State.
Yep.
And that's arguably 3 top 5 or 6 teams, right? So there's a scenario where you could lose those 3 games, win all the games you're supposed to, be 9-3 in the Big Ten, and you're probably a playoff team in this new expanded playoff, right?
Yeah.
I would say for Michigan fans, I don't know where the level of acceptability is going to be. I think how they play. I thought somebody mentioned like how you lose, right? No blowouts. What's changed, pre-2020 and post with Harbaugh was they had never won a game as the underdog, right?
Yeah.
Like there were all these check marks where it was like that get over the hump mark.
Yeah.
Right. So I think as long and they always seem to lose games late. right? And now it's been the opposite where you're closing games in the fourth quarter. I think if that feels the same, or even if you lose, but it's not because the wheels fell off in the fourth quarter, right? And you don't lose a game to a team you shouldn't. And I'd say ideally, I think you got to win one of those three for it to be like a real 9-3 back into a playoff. People are probably like, okay, first year, blah. You're making justifications for the year, blah, blah, blah. Well, they did this. And, maybe at that point, Orgy wasn't the guy. Who knows?
Steve nailed it here. I think that's my argument.
I agree. Yeah.
You can't lose games that you should win. I mean, you can't do it. You can't go back to old habits. I think 100%. That's kind of like my major takeaway is if you're not doing the things that you were doing before, I think Michigan's going to be okay.
And the crazy thing for me, nobody get pissed at me. Okay. And again, as the season develops, this could change. But right now, I think the Texas game is arguably more important than Ohio State. Because so much has been taken from the Ohio State game now in terms of with the expanded playoff. And we've talked about this before. I don't want to get into the conspiracy about this too much. But you'd almost rather be the 5 seed and not win your conference, because then you're playing the 12 seed, which is going to be the worst team in the playoff and arguably probably the G5 conference champ or a 9-3 SEC team, right? And then your reward for winning that game is playing the 4 seed, who's probably going to be the Big 12 conference champ and the lowest ranked conference champ, and you get the home playoff game, etc. But anyway, what I mean though is especially for the start of the year, if you beat Texas, you're on a rocket ship.
Yep.
You won that first tough game. They're going to be underdogs in that game. Texas comes into Ann Arbor. Sharon Moore now, in going back to last year, has won these big games. Second game of the year as the full real head coach. Texas has natty aspirations, right? Like you win that game and right now all of a sudden you're talking about that Ohio State game might be for a berth in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
Right. The momentum that could come out of that. Yeah, that's a good point too. You're basically in the playoffs by winning it. And what's cool is, as long as you don't lose by 30, the loss doesn't really hurt you.
Right.
We've seen from the committee in the past already. Look what happened with Alabama and Florida State. Lose to a good team, beat a crappy team by 50. They'd rather have you lose to a good team.
Yep.
You could lose to Texas within the margin of what the spread is, and it basically is a whatever. It's not a Big Ten game, so it doesn't affect you at all, but you win that game, man. And
yeah, I mean, it's an obvious thing to say, but it really kind of resets expectations. What happens after that game, after the Texas game? I mean, if they win, fans are going to be like, oh, Michigan can run the table. If Michigan loses close, you're still going to have people confident and be like, hey, they're right there. If they're blown out, they get blown out at home, then people are going to be like, well, this might be kind of more of a, not necessarily a rebuilding project, but, it could be, it feels like a cop-out answer. But yeah, as you said, that's either going to be, that's your inflection point, no matter which way this goes. There's going to be multiple scenarios where Michigan wins big, then, sky high expectations. Michigan wins close. Hey, people feel good. They've got a chance. Michigan loses close. People feel good. Maybe, maybe not the best, but Michigan gets blown out, then people are going to be like, oh boy, this might be not bad. This might be bad.
I just don't see that happening, but I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't really know what to expect right now because there's
still know the QB is going to be.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to let them practice first. I mean, anything about quarterbacks right now is just taking with a grain of salt because they're not practicing together. They're not running plays. They're just throwing to each other on grass.
Yeah, so and the 7-on-7 stuff, like I've said this a bunch. There is absolutely nothing that I think Jack Tuttle can prove in the offseason that people don't already know about Jack Tuttle.
Right.
Like the guy's going into his 7th year. Like,
right.
I I wanted to hit on this last point kind of off of what I said with the Texas-Ohio State thing. At least right now, again, what happens in the season is going to change this. But it kind of feels like Michigan's playing with house money against Ohio State this year because this is their natty or bust season. I know the coaches and some people have been hesitant to say it. Will Howard wasn't.
I think that dynamic is so weird because Michigan was so like, oh, this is natty or bust. This is natty or
As it
bust.
was.
Yeah. And like, duh, obviously. And the fact that they're so adverse to embracing the natty or bust mentality.
I think it shows they're scared.
Yeah, well, again, toughness issue, you know.
From a natty or bust standpoint in terms of Ryan Day's job, I don't agree. I still think the fire Ryan Day talk is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever. But look, Ohio State is kind of matching Michigan's formula this year. They had NFL prospects come back. They did some work in the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
They've made some drastic changes like Ryan Day giving up play calling, which you're going to have to sell me on Chip Kelly. I'm sorry. Whatever.
Same.
But I think if you go into Columbus and lose that game this year, it's just like nobody wants it. I mean, we love beating Ohio State. This 3-year run's been pretty amazing.
Right.
But it would kind of be like, well, yeah, you should beat us.
Yeah.
You're the ones who said we're going to be terrible because the coaches changed and all the best players left and blah, blah, blah. You said that. You brought everyone back. This is your natty team. Ryan Day's been out there saying we're 2 plays away from national championships because missed field goals or whatever. Like they're still playing that game. You know, so look, on the flip side of that, if you beat Ohio State this year,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Holy cow! And again, the I don't know if sad is the right word, but there's a scenario where Michigan beats Ohio State, Ohio State wins a natty, and they don't care one bit that Michigan won this year.
Yeah, that's true too.
You know what I mean? Like the game just it's lost that little piece of it.
Yeah. Well, this playoffs, it's just completely taken away the glamour of the game. It's taken away the glamour because
they could play 3 times in 1 year.
They could play 3 times. And which win or loss do you take away as a fan? Like
the playoff.
Yeah. Like
if I go 1-2 and I won the playoff game, I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly. So
which sucks.
It takes away. It totally just ruins it, you know, but that's the modern day college football. No one that makes the decisions cares about traditions these days. It's all about the dollar. So
yeah, and
it's unfortunate, but
I think we'll have to see. I mean, theoretically, the berth in the Big Ten championship game could still be on the line. I mean, people don't realize like that's why the rivalry became so good because more than likely whoever won that game was winning the Big Ten.
Yep.
Right. It's what made it what it is. Yes, Michigan, Ohio, whatever, but that's what built it up.
Yep.
You know, so yeah, I saw Ryan Day said something. He doesn't feel pressure to beat Michigan. Harbaugh said it was do or die. Try. Yeah, I've said the same thing. Look, I struggle to hate Ryan Day. I mean, we've talked about some of the things he does for mental health, and I mean, obviously, he lost his father tragically when he was young. Whatever. He's not Urban Meyer, right? But I've said the same thing for a long time. I feel like he just doesn't love the rivalry. I think it bugs him.
Well, he wasn't. He said he's not Urban.
Right. Urban's the home run for you.
He wasn't born in this rivalry.
Right.
He doesn't understand. He had to learn the hatred.
I think, but he feels like he's faking it.
Yeah, I get it.
And beyond that, I think it annoys him that he wins and he's such a good head coach, statistically, record-wise, whatever, and that's all people talk about. The comment he said after the game this year about how, well, yeah, this game means a lot to a lot of people. It felt like he was excluding himself in that.
Yep.
And I think it drives him nuts that winning that game has to matter so much. And I feel like, I don't know, when he says team up north and when they do some of those things, it doesn't feel genuine to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to your point, if you don't live this, I mean, Urban Meyer and Jim Harbaugh were born in the same hospital in Toledo, right? Jim Harbaugh was a ball boy for Michigan. Urban's got his ties to Ohio State going back to when he was a kid. Like, it's just a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
And look, you don't have to be that to get the rivalry and love it. Michigan has a coach right now in Sharon Moore who did not grow up in this rivalry, but he grew up as a coach in the last few years in this era of it, and he feels sincere when he talks about it.
100%.
You know, I don't know. Anyway, last thing we'll talk about, last question. I didn't mention him on purpose when we were talking about recruiting and talking about wide receiver recruiting.
Yeah.
I know Derek Meadows pushed his commitment date back a week. I know Michigan, i.e. Sharon Moore, spoke with him. Michigan's arguably pushing for him, whatever. In my opinion, and Josh, I think you, when I posted this on the board, you kind of echoed it. Michigan was 4th out of 4 going into that race.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame thought he was a lock for a long time and got really worried about Alabama and LSU.
Yep.
And I think there's some sort of bidding war going on there. And look, if Michigan gets them, then okay, more power. But I can't be talked into them being a serious player in that personally.
No, I think they made things interesting, but at the end of the day, I mean, I still think Notre Dame is, I don't want to, I mean, probably Notre Dame's going to be the team.
You think it'll still be ND?
I think it'll be Notre Dame. I mean, gut feeling, I think it'll be Notre Dame, but unless Bama or LSU come in at the last second and really make things, I mean, it was very much a Bama LSU race at one point, but I think Notre Dame kind of got their collective shit together in that regard and kind of, you know, evened things out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, maybe Michigan made him have a second of a pause, but I don't think the main reason why he pushed his decision back was because Michigan got in his ear. Maybe part of it because he's had, you know, multiple teams in his ear, but yeah, I am not, I'm not even expecting it. Great 90s band.
Yeah, collective shit. Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah. For those of you that get that reference, you are my people. You know, he recorded that himself singing through like a toilet paper roll.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have the toilet paper at the desk anymore. Can't do it.
No, it's gone. It's been used.
Yeah, check to clear or check to get larger. That would be my guess, but and hey, again, more power, whatever. All right, let me breeze through these. We'll get out of here. Yes, Michigan beating Ohio State for a 4th year would be hilarious. I'd argue. I think this year would be. I don't even know what I would call it. I mean,
that would almost be better than the last 3 years.
That's I was scared to say it, but like again, you're playing with house money. They've got this natty level team, and that would be.
Yeah. I would probably find more satisfaction with Michigan winning this. No.
21 was
last year.
Really?
All of that crap that happened.
Oh, that's a good point.
And all that stuff.
All right. Last thing.
Probably last year is probably the most satisfying.
Last thing, and then
was good too, but
last thing, and then we're gonna go. People watching, answer in the comments, and if you're not watching live, make sure you're liking, subscribing the channel, notification bell so you can join us live. 21, 22, 23. Either pick your favorite or put them in order. What was your favorite win of the last 3 years? Who you 23 tough. For you?
It's 23, 21.
I'm going to talk myself into each one as I talk about it.
I mean, you can make a strong argument. There's no wrong answer, but I think Steve's got the right answer. 23, 21, 22. I think that's mine.
I think 21 is first for me. That
I get it. Look, I don't think there's a wrong answer.
There's not. I think 21 for me. I mean, to finally get over the hump for one thing, right?
Yeah.
But that game was a movie. It was cinematic, man.
Yeah.
Everything from the snow in the stadium. I was in the stands that day, and I'm about to name drop like an idiot, but here we go. When I talked to Trevor Keegan, when we did an interview with him, I remember talking to him about there was the idea of the blue hair olds and down in front, all of that. None of that. The entire stadium stood the entire game.
Yep.
That was the first game with the DJ, which was like whatever, but like there was some energy in that stadium that I've never felt before. And there was this weird relationship between the players on the sideline and the fans and vice versa. Multiple moments throughout that game. When Brown ripped Roman Wilson's helmet off, and Keegan and who would that have been? Stuber came up and got in his face, and that whole thing happened, and the crowd was just losing their mind, and the players were, screaming with the fans, and then the penalty got called, and then you looked at the Ohio State sideline, and they were frozen.
Yep.
And that was like this moment for me of like the entire year of talking about we're gonna beat them. Not we think we can. We're gonna beat them. We're gonna beat them. All of that talk, it was like they're gonna win this game.
Mm-hmm.
That the Haskins hurdle on that last drive. I mean, there were these moments. It was just unreal. And I remember even tailgating and before the game, there was just this weird feeling in the air. They were gonna win it, and then you could make the case for 22 because it proved it wasn't a fluke.
Yep.
They blamed the weather and all this other nonsense. And you should have had 52. That last sack at the end was a strip.
Yeah.
But the two Donovan runs in their house, JJ waving, whatever. And then you come back in 23. To your point, you're right. All the stuff they did behind the scenes. and Harbaugh gets suspended and all the bull crap. Zinter gets hurt. Will gets hurt. And you still win the game. The day head down tunnel walk. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know. What do we got? 21, 23, 22 because JJ was an unknown. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, look, again.
21 was incredible in person. Agree.
There's no wrong answer here.
No.
You're not going to see me argue against any one of those.
It's a good mix. People are saying everything.
I mean, for me personally, I think just because, well, I don't even want to insert myself in all of this, but like 23, just because of the information that we had of, the NCAA not being able to find anything and just all of that stuff that everyone else was saying that just didn't end up being true. Just kind of think that was the most satisfying for me because it's like, well, now you don't have any excuses anymore. So,
well, and we said that throughout the scandal, you have to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've compared it to Deflategate a lot. And if you're a Jets fan talking about Deflategate, you look like an idiot.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are and where we'll get in the scheme of things with the sign gate thing too. And you've seen some Ohio people. There's some prominent Ohio State accounts online. They're like, guys, this was fun, but they still won the game. Like they won the natty.
Right.
And there's plenty still going, cheaters, you cheated, it doesn't count, asterisk, the hammer's coming, blah, 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 whatever. And then you see
losers.
The ball knowers, man. I've turned into a Maurice Claret fan. He's come out and said multiple times, he goes, he nailed it for me the other day. What I've been talking about with this stupid part about this scandal. All 22 footage, TV broadcasts. He said, if you're good at scouting, you have everything you need already.
Yep.
I don't know why Stallions was doing this. He didn't need to.
Yeah.
He didn't need to. That's the funniest thing about it. And if it was a massive advantage like people think it is, everyone would be doing it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know how easy
everyone is.
Right. You know how easy it would be to have somebody taking footage and sending it to you that's not connected to the program and whatever. Like it's just the stupidest made up scandal in the history of sports.
Cheat better. That's how I have to respond to that. Cheat better if you think it's so bad. Cheat better.
Oh, the Michigan State talking about player safety. Sign stealing is not illegal.
Yep.
And then, oh God, remember when they were huddling and then like the quarterback was running to the sideline? They did that whole gimmick for the first half. And then once they were getting their butt kicked, they were like, oh, I guess we should stop this game.
Yeah.
Like embarrassing. But all right,
Yeah.
that's fun. Cool. All right. My usual pitch. You guys know it. A lot of the recruiting intel and stuff we talked about today. We've already been having these conversations over at the Den, michigan.rivals.com. If you're not a subscriber already, we would love to have you join the community. We've got a bunch of subscribers, regular viewers of Hail to the Podcast in the chat right now. We appreciate you guys. If you're not watching us live and you'd like to, like I said, make sure you get that notification bell. If you're not a subscriber already, you got a couple ways you can get in for free. The Rivals 30 promo is always active, gets you 30 days for free to give us a shot. And Josh has been running a new promo on Sundays, Subscription Sunday. Got it on the bottom there. Every Sunday, follow Josh on X, Twitter, whatever, at Josh Henschke. He tweets the graphic with the comment. You retweet it. He picks a winner every week. Free 1-year subscription. Amazing Blue Review. Be part of the Rivals Network. And again, as always, the folks that are already members, we appreciate you. So proud of our community. I like to say we built, but I mean, you guys are in there active and you are the community. So it's been cool. Both of us have had some difficult days recently, and the level of support and just community feel that we have over there, it means a lot to us. So hope you guys know that. But anyway, another episode of Hail to the Podcast. We will likely be back Sunday at 8 or 7. Excuse me. That is what we always shoot for. But again, sometimes things change. Went on a Monday. Keep following us on Twitter. Make sure you're liking and subscribing here at YouTube so you can get the notifications. Keep an eye on the site this week. Obviously, we'll have more intel rolling up ahead of the barbecue. Also, really, really cool event tomorrow we're taking part in. So we're going to have some content coming with some of the best players on the 2024 version of Michigan football. So excited for that. Brock's going to be out there taking part. And then hopefully we can get him back on the pod soon. I know he hates when we do recruiting.
Yeah. I don't blame him.
Yeah. So we'll have to do, gosh, we're getting really close to fall camp season preview stuff though.
Yep.
I mean, God, that's 2 or 3 weeks. We'll start that.
Yep.
Start some depth chart conversation and some other stuff like that. So speaking of, I am off. I'm assuming, Josh, to the same place to go play college football.
Yep.
25. Alex Orgy.
I'm in the middle. I'm in the fourth quarter of the Texas game downstairs. So I got to
score.
Get it. 24-20 right now.
Ooh.
Will Johnson's had
Orgy's a dog in that game.
Yeah, Will Johnson's had 2 pick sixes of this game. So
Seriously?
I don't know how that happened, but
so your offense is struggling.
Yeah, the passing game is really difficult in that. So
it's different, but
yeah.
I like the idea of like changing the catch point, some of the animations they've done with that or whatever. But yeah, Orgy's the next Mike Vick in that game. That dude's a beast running the ball. It's hilarious.
Yeah. I need to run more. I got 6 sacks against me on Texas. They're just killing me today.
And they got some pass rush up front, which we'll get into when we preview the Michigan-Texas game.
Yeah.
And oh my God, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. Yeah. All right, boys, girls, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This has been another episode of Hail